In life, we encounter people every day, all of whom have stories to share. We rarely take the time to ask people their personal stories, many of which will touch, move, and inspire us in some way. Matt has a passion for making authentic connections and learning about people from all walks of life. He has lived a life of giving back to the community and making a difference in people's lives. Are you ready to meet fascinating people and hear some inspiring stories? The Matt Hilton Show will introduce you to a world of possibilities you never knew existed. Sit back, be present, and enjoy. Here's your host, Matt Hilton.
Hey everyone, Matt Hilton here with the Matt Hilton Show. Thank you for tuning in. Today's episode is episode 2 with Kaylee Danielson. You don't want to miss this episode. Stay tuned for a word from our sponsor.
Inspired, experienced, customer-focused. Find a mortgage that fits your needs with Maria Leach at First United Bank Mortgage, specializing in construction and closing all types of loans, including jumbo, portfolio, conventional, FHA, and VA. A tenured team, outstanding service, competitive programs. Finance your dreams with Maria Leach at First United Bank Mortgage. mleach.firstunitedteam.com, 214-316-7915. mleach at firstunitedbank.com. Member FDIC, equal housing lender.
The next little part here is foster care. So let's talk about foster care for a bit.
Let's talk about foster care. Obviously, the motivation for foster care is family preservation. Preserving children staying with their parents. And if not parents, they do try to find...
Their parents of origin.
Yes,
okay.
Their birth family, their biological family. And if not, trying to find like next of kin or a kinship placement. And so it's really important to know that about foster care and to know that there are going to be kids who come into your home and your job as a foster parent is to support reunification. It's to support these children being able to go back hopefully safely to their biological family. We've seen some pendulum swing where maybe kids are being returned to biological family before they're ready, when they haven't had enough services, when the family maybe still has not healed enough to be healthy and safe. Or we see those times, and you hear about those times, and it's very true, where kids go back home, back in the system, go back home, back in the system. And so there's some work to do in the foster care system. But again, that's a great way for people to get involved who maybe don't need to or want to be adoptive or foster parents, but you can get involved in like respite care and getting involved in, different ministries that help support kids who are aging out of foster care. The city of Dallas has a couple of things that are really great that help kids who are aging out of foster care.
And just for the audience's sake, I know what aging out, but what is aging out of foster care?
Yes, that is essentially, it means when a child turns 18 and still has no permanency plan. Either is not adopted by an adoptive family, is unable to return to their biological family through the system, and turns 18, and essentially in the state of Texas is considered an adult, and can make all of their own legal decisions. So
if they are placed with the foster family when they turn 18,
they can choose, they kind of get a choice. So there is now, which is great, and it was a response to understanding where maybe we were failing some as child welfare professionals. Kids who are 18 can opt in to like extended care kind of stuff. And again, it's not perfect. None of it is. But it's really important if you get into foster care to be emotionally prepared to love children well, to hold their trauma that they are bringing into your home, and to help support family reunification. And if that just doesn't sound like something you're capable of doing, that's okay. It's okay. And then foster to adopt is a little bit different. These are families who are wanting to adopt and are open to what we call like legal risk placements, where there's a high likelihood that this child is going to become eligible to be adopted, either because there is no family for the child to return to, or extreme circumstances where they've decided that it's in the child's safest and best interest. There's a lot of court and legal things that go involved in those decisions. So also in foster care and adoption, be ready to have people in your home a lot. A CPS caseworker comes and checks on things, as they should. right? And so you have to be ready at any given time for them to show up and say, hello, right. How are things going? And so it is a big commitment. It's a big commitment, but it's also a needed one. We have a lot of kids in care who need stability and need trauma-informed homes to be at, even if it's temporarily.
So if there aren't enough families, where do these kids go?
I mean, there are kids who've spent the night in CPS offices. That's happened. It's still happening sometimes. There are children's homes that have that are contracted with the state to take children who are in custody of the state of Texas. And so sometimes kids get placed there. There used to be a lot of things called like group homes, more kids in a home than maybe like a typical foster care placement. But those, there's been a lot of changes with some of the group homes. And again, in response to hearing stories and hearing things that were working and not working. So yeah, the answer is we do. We need more people willing to do foster care and or even like respite, because that helps sustain those families who are like in it for the long haul, but they need a break, right. Because it's heavy and it's hard and it's a lot of work. So respite families are the ones who come in just to take the kids for a weekend or something like that. So they still have to be licensed and trained and all that, but it's a really, again, beautiful, hard thing to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the answer is there's just not necessarily an answer. It just really depends. And obviously older children are the hardest ones to place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So soapbox. What was the soapbox that you were?
That was it. That like if you want to go into foster care, it's not the cheap way to adopt, quote unquote. It's the intention of the system, as much as it doesn't always work well, the intention of the system is family reunification. And if that isn't what you're capable of doing, imagine having children that you're loving and you're trying to take good care of, and you know they're going to leave your home and maybe go back into a situation that's not that great.
Yeah.
But family preservation is the intention of that model. And so I just, it's important that people know that it's not the discounted option situation.
Yeah. So let's talk about, for a minute, something that I had mentioned to you about a need that I see. And that is for children in the LGBTQ community.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I'm about to say. Who are kicked out of their houses when they come out, or when their parents discover their sexuality is not what they thought it was. Where do children like that, where can they go? Is there some place for them? I mean, I hear a lot of couch surfing goes on, at friends' houses or whatever. Extended sleepovers, whatever, just to have a place to rest their head. Sleeping under bridges. I mean, all sorts of things happen with kids that don't know. That's why I didn't come out when I was living at home, for fear of what may happen. Not saying that my parents would have, but it was a real fear.
Oh, sure.
So is there any place that you know of that any child that is asked not to come back can go?
There are, and I don't have the names of them like off the top of my head right now, but there are there's some online resources for sure for kids to go to try to get connected with support and people who will try to get them somewhere safe. There are some shelters in the DFW area that will and are able to accept what's called, I believe the proper term is unaccompanied minor. So they're not in custody of the state of Texas, but they are a homeless youth. And so there are some programs that are set up where they're able to provide shelter. Shelter is obviously temporary. It's a big gap in care. It's a big gap in care for kids who are dealing with even sometimes just some exploration. They haven't even decided or feel comfortable identifying themselves one way or the other yet, but just not having the resources to even explore those things safely and have a safe person to talk to about those things. It kind of goes back to earlier when we talked about the mental health field. We really need more professionals, I think, who are educated and equipped to work with especially kids and their parents when they are identifying as part of the LGBTQ community, or even just exploring if they identify as part of that community, because support in that time is really crucial. Because like you said, there's this huge fear. Even if a child really believes deep down that their parents will have a positive or at least accepting or safe response, that's still big to say, I don't fit this norm you expected me to. Right. And of course, that's going to come with a lot of fear, anxiety, stress, and none of us are our best selves when that's the space we're living in. Right. So yeah, there's not tons of just tangible physical places that I know of in the DFW area for kids to go, but I know there's a couple of shelters that are able to accept unaccompanied minors. But I would love to see something come about that is specifically for kids who have been kicked out. But it is legally complicated. Yeah. Because they're still a minor. They are in the legal custody of their parents, even if their parents chose to say, you may not come back to my home. There can be some legal repercussions for those parents even, for abandonment things. Like it gets messy and complicated and like very legally. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, just messy. Yes, messy is a good word for that. Not a reason for us not to find ways to serve that community though. Just a challenge that we have to be aware of and find ways to work through. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I've sensed a great passion from you today of what you do. So what is it that gives you the greatest joy in what you do?
Ooh. Anytime I get an opportunity to just be present with somebody who is in need, it matters. Even if I can't resolve their situation, people don't need someone to fix them. Right. They need somebody to be present and to listen and to problem solve and critically think with them, to walk alongside, not dictate to or anything like that. And just those moments where I've been privileged to see somebody meet a goal or feel seen and heard for the first time in a long time, it's important. It matters. Yeah. Being a human in this world is hard. We're dealing with a lot. We're dealing with a lot of input that we've not really had to deal with before in the world of social media and instant global access to every bad thing that's happening in the world. That's heavy. And we need people to just do life with us. And I feel very strongly about doing my best to, actually it's from a t-shirt that I have. It says, serve, not fix, and love, not judge. And that sums up how I want to live my life.
Yeah. Yeah. That's beautiful. What's your biggest struggle in what you do?
You know, when you want people to be okay, you see them hurting, you want to take their pain away, and sometimes you can't. And there's only so much I can do, right? I'm not, as much as I like to lie to myself and say that I am superhuman and I can do all the things, I can just add one more. That's not a healthy response to, you know, being in the mental health field either. Boundaries and being able to leave things when it's no longer mine to do, or even recognizing what may or may not be mine to do from the very beginning. What is my clients to do? What is mine to do? What is this system's to do? What is mine to do? That's probably one of my constant battles within myself and just within living this world and seeing pain everywhere. It's hard. It feels heavy sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would assume self-care is something that you need to focus on being in the mental health.
Such a buzzword, Matt. Yeah.
So yes, I used a buzz phrase, but how do you take care of yourself?
That's a great question. I don't know. I think self-care, especially when you're in a people-serving position, whatever that might be, whether it's mental health, nursing, teaching, anything that's serving other humans, it's hard to remember, and as cliche and buzzword as this is about to be, right? You can't pour from an empty cup.
Yeah.
Right, it's very true, and people love to remind, like, well, the airlines tell you put your mask on first, and some of these things, which I'm sure any fellow social workers who are watching this go, yeah, that's great, and it sounds good on paper, but it's hard to do in real life. It's hard to turn off saying, I can't do anything else with this situation right now, so it's okay for me to let it be, or to say, I work Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, and you can come anytime in that window. Well, I want to come this time or that time, or like, why aren't you there for me? Dealing with some of those things is kind of hard. So self-care for me is a lot on focusing on balance. So those times where I maybe lean hard into my workaholic self and let myself, because that's what I feel like I need to do in this particular time or season or with this particular situation. I don't beat myself up over that anymore, and but also then make sure that I'm balancing that with time to just do adult things that you need to do, like not run out of gas on the road because you forgot to go gas up the night before, or getting your inspection done, or doing a load of laundry. Those are things I think we often don't think of as self-care. We kind of think like bubble baths and eating some chocolate, which is also lovely if that's what works for you. But sometimes it's just taking care of the daily things that you have as a human, needs you have. Getting good sleep, some of those kinds of things. Going to the grocery store and not
eating out all the time.
Yes, yes, not going, I still haven't gone grocery shopping, so I guess it's just another quick burger on the way home, which then you don't feel great after, or those kinds of things. So yeah, just doing, allowing myself to prioritize myself and balancing that with serving those around me.
Yeah. Is there anything that I should have asked you that you were hoping that I would ask? When it comes to
my life,
what you do? Yes.
I don't think so. I think you asked really great questions. We focused a lot on my professional life, which is totally fine. That's a lot of who I am. I'm very passionate about what I get to do.
Because we're about to take a shift into your personal life.
Oh, are we?
Here we go.
Okay, well, that was the only other thing I anticipated.
Right?
So if you're ready to make that shift, I am ready to go there with you.
Yeah, so what do you do for fun?
What do I do for fun? That's a good question. I love to read. If
Any
I get
genre of literature?
Anything.
Okay.
I like reading books about trauma and how to work on that and things that enhance my professional life. I guess I also find it interesting, but also I weirdly like historical fiction.
Okay.
So that's my disappear kind of book. I'm also just a huge Harry Potter fan. So sometimes I'll just throw on Audible Harry Potter books and disappear into the wonderful wizarding world. Wow. Yeah. So there's a little bit of my nerd showing.
Right.
In fact, I'm actually planning a trip that's been a long time in the making to go to Orlando, to go to the theme park and do all the Harry Potter things.
Oh, fun.
Yeah. So a good friend of mine and I are going to go.
Okay. Is that coming up soon?
Yes. It's coming up in February.
Fantastic.
I cannot wait. I'm so excited to just relive some childhood a little bit and just enjoy my time doing something fun and silly and frivolous.
Yeah. Is there anyone in your life who has influenced you greatly, and how did they influence you?
Oh, so many. The first person that comes to mind, two people really come to my mind first. And as I don't know if it's cliche, but my mother and my dad.
Okay.
My dad was definitely a workaholic. And it's like, generational patterns that happen in families. One of ours is when you say like, well, you're a Danielson, it means like you're working a lot and you work hard and you have good work ethic and you're like gold star employee kind of person.
Sure.
And that's beautiful, but also it can swing to the other side where it becomes unhealthy. But my dad was always a very hard worker, but he saw people and he cared for people well. Even though he was not necessarily in a people helping industry, my dad was a manager of a farm supply store called Country General, which doesn't even exist anymore. But that's what he did. And he was a good manager because he was good with people. And so, we lived in Iowa at the time that he passed away, and people came from everywhere we had ever lived to come to his funeral, his memorial service. People as far as Texas came all the way to Iowa for his memorial service. And it just, because he saw people, he cared about people. And so that's always been something I've admired and wanted to also, be that kind of person. And then my mom is just probably one of the strongest women I know. She did the stay-at-home mom thing, and every time my dad was like, oh, they're moving me to a new store. Oh, we've been here 9 months. We're moving again. She just went with it and always made every new place a home. And after my dad passed, she was a young single mom to 4 kids. My older brother was 15, and my youngest brother was about to turn 3, I think. So, yeah. And had to make a lot of decisions by herself all of a sudden, and what to do and how to do it. And she really did the best she could. And to this day, she's going back to school right now to do some childcare stuff because she loves working at the daycare in our hometown and wants to maybe be a full-time teacher there. And she's never let anything stop her. She's also, if you met her, I don't know that that's the first thing you would think about her. But yeah, she's one of the strongest women I know. I love my mom.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
As far as things that you've done in the past, I'm not talking, maybe it's a regret, but is there anything that you've done that if you had to redo, you wouldn't do again?
I don't think so.
Okay. And let's talk about
yeah,
that. Why not?
I'm a believer in the things that you go through, you have an opportunity to grow through. I don't think that means you should make unwise decisions for the sake of, I'll learn from it. I'm a kind of a cautious person, so I haven't made any extreme decisions. Even the first time I got a tattoo, I had a design sitting on my mirror for literal years before I committed to it. So there's some caution that I have as just naturally as a human. I think there are things in my life that I sometimes wish had not happened, but at the same time, I can see how I've been able to grow through them. Obviously no kid wants to go through losing a parent as a child. And I don't look at that and say, and dwell in a space of, I wish that was different, because I don't feel like that's healthy. It's not going to lend itself towards good grieving and healing. But there are always times that I wonder, even to this day, what might have been different about me and about my life, and what would my relationship with my dad have looked like. And so I think there's always room for what ifs. And sometimes it's okay to think about those, but also I don't think I have any regrets.
Yeah. Okay.
I think more I have some regrets about what I didn't do than things I've done. Like, I wish I would have been a little more adventurous in college and said, oh, you don't have to hold down a job this summer. Like, you're going to do that for your whole life. Go do the mission trip in Africa that you want to do.
Right.
I talked myself out of all of those kinds of experiences because I was like, I have to be so responsible. And so now I'm trying to make up for it a little bit.
And going to Orlando
yes, to do a very childlike thing.
Right.
But yeah, so it was more like things that I didn't do or that I talked myself out of doing that I would do differently for sure, and have advised younger mentees that I have, like, in college is the time to go do and explore the world if you can. Like, still keep up your grades, don't lose your scholarships, like, be wise, but have fun, experience the world. And I think it's so important. So yeah, those are my only quote unquote regrets, I guess.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
And the premise of the show, I'm sure you've watched some episodes, but it's fascinating people and inspiring stories. And I'm going to ask you to go somewhere and go somewhere with me.
Okay, let's do it.
Okay. So how old were you when you lost your dad?
I was 11, just about to turn 12.
Just about to turn 12. Okay, very impressionable age.
Yes.
What would you say? Because I can only imagine losing a parent at that age, right? And the insecurity, the unknown, like what is going to happen now, all of those things, right?
Yeah.
For anybody that may be listening that has lost a parent, and maybe they are a young teenager, what would you tell them? Like, if you had to go back and tell your younger self, like what would you tell them right now to help them get through each day?
Yeah. A couple of things. I might cry.
I'm here to hold you.
Thank you, friend. Talk about it. One of the things I personally experienced and internalized was that if I grieved, I was going to make other people around me sad. And I didn't want to make it harder on them. I didn't want it to be harder on my mom. I didn't want it to be harder on my brothers. I could see my brothers struggling. And I think some of this is just who I am as a person, but I internalized it's my responsibility to help everybody else. And so I didn't grieve well until quite a bit later. And so talk about it. Ask questions of family members to tell stories about your parent. It was something we didn't do enough. And some of that, I think, might have been, my mom remarried, and she remarried according to like some standards, they might say kind of quickly, but I truly believe it was in the best interest of our family. I had a wonderful stepdad for 20 years. And he understood because he lost his dad as a kid. And there was a lot of little things that made that work, but also it then felt like, can we still talk about my dad? Like, is that still okay? And again, just kind of internalized like, no, and that's just not true. Talk about it. Ask questions. Ask for people to tell you stories. I think eventually being able to ask my aunts, my dad's sisters, some more stories and getting their perspective and being reminded of that he loved a practical joke and he loved to laugh and he had a very distinct laugh and his laugh has been genetically passed to my baby brother and sharing some of those things, like talk about it, I think would be the biggest thing, and that you are not responsible for anybody else's grief journey but your own. You can be with people because you're grieving the same person, but you don't have, you're allowed to like let yourself grieve.
Yeah.
And if that's crying, if that's being angry, if that's, for me, I really railed at God a lot for over a year. But that also is what brought me closer to God, was that process. And my dad was a very faithful man. But yeah, and I would just say also just find support that may be outside of the people who are also grieving this person. One of the reasons I chose the agency I'm at right now is because they have a grief support group for kids, and they have a summer camp for kids who have lost a loved one to death. And I thought, I wonder how things would be different for my brothers and I, especially some of the later struggles that we've had, if we had had something like that. Because we lived in Iowa, my dad passed away, my brother was in the hospital, my older brother, and then as soon as he was released, we moved down to Colorado where my mom's parents lived. Good decision. She needed support. I mean, imagine like single parenting. It's not easy, and all of that was good, but then we got there and I literally started a new school the very next day. And I didn't want anybody to know. Small town, people found out, but I think if I had talked about it more and shared stories and heard stories, that would have been incredibly helpful.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you for sharing that.
That's a good question.
Well, thanks. I tried.
It's like you've done this before.
No, not very long. It's just something, I want these shows to be something that people can watch and get something from, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think this is such a rich content couple of episodes that we've done about adoption and fostering and the education and training and thought process that needs to go into that decision before actually going there. And then, just what you just shared about losing a parent at a young age. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up, I'm going to ask you 3 questions about a nonprofit that I'm the Chief Happiness Officer for.
I love
called
that
Who Do
title,
You
by
Know,
the way.
Right?
Yes.
And so we inspire imagination and dreaming in people through any walk of life by asking 3 questions and making connections based upon the answers to those questions. So it is, who is a living person that you'd like to meet, a place that you would like to go, and an experience you'd like to have. So a person that you would like to meet, who would that be?
Well, as a social worker, I have a deep connection to Brene Brown. She doesn't know that we have this connection, but I know.
Talk to her.
Brene Brown. I would like to meet you and talk to you about all the things. I think she's done some really incredible work, especially about the power of story and telling stories and vulnerability and all those things that just are what make us human. And I would love to talk to her, especially because she has a research-minded brain, and that fascinates me because, you get me out of numbers, get me out of the research element. That was my least favorite part of grad school. But also, I love the results of research. I'll read those all day long. But yeah, I think Brene Brown has done some really incredible work, and I would fangirl for sure.
Okay.
Try really hard to keep my cool, but I'd be very excited to meet her.
Okay. Well, you may fangirl at our gala at the end of next year because we're hoping to have Brene Brown as our keynote speaker. So crossing fingers that a connection will be made there.
You hear that, Brene?
Let's go.
We're going to meet. I feel it.
A meet and greet at the gala. There you go.
Oh, man. Wouldn't that be amazing?
It would be. And I believe it'll happen.
I believe, yes.
There you go. All right. So a place you want to go that you haven't been to yet.
I want to go that I haven't been to yet. Well, Harry Potter World was on that list, but we're checking that one off.
Right.
Another place I'd really love to go would be, I think it's kind of like a debate for me between Scotland and Sweden. Okay. I have a lot of heritage in both of those places. My great-grandparents, I have this really vivid memory of this Swedish Bible that was in their house, and they still even spoke the language, but they wouldn't let my grandmother and her sister learn because, they're Americans now. That old kind of mentality that we used to have, might still have some. So my grandmother doesn't know, her parents' native language, but I would really love to go visit Sweden or just do a heritage tour of where maybe my family is from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And an experience you would like to have.
Experience I would like to have. Oof. I don't know.
So some mind joggers on this is like jumping out of a perfectly good airplane.
Done that. Lovely.
Okay, you've done, yeah,
lovely. So fun. Everyone should do it.
Going to a Cowboys game on Thanksgiving Day, or a hot air balloon ride, or just so an experience. That's what that is relating to.
Ooh, man. I can't even think. There's so many things running through my mind right now, Matt. I'm like, all the adventures I could have. I think different things from like
riding on a broomstick like Harry Potter.
Yeah, I don't know if I want that one. It seems highly uncomfortable.
Right.
I would love to go on a hot air balloon ride. You said that, and that instantly sparked. There's places in Colorado that has a hot air balloon festival, and I've seen them before. I think that would be so fun. I love adrenaline type things. I like rappelling and all these kinds of. I haven't got to do any of that in a long time. So anything adventure related, or I think something I would love to do again is like a guided backpacking trip. And I'd like to hit a 14er. Last time I did it was like a 13.9 because they're not as quote unquote busy, I guess. I don't know. I don't know anything about it other than I loved it. Not everybody loves, not being able to shower for a week and, sleeping in a tent and it's cold. And I also have asthma, so it's like intense and I'm like puffing my inhaler the entire time. But I loved the experience of backpacking, so I would totally do that again.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Good to hear. Well, Kaylee, thank you so much for being here today and sharing your story or part of your story with us.
Yes, it was so fun. I always love spending time with you. You're so easy to talk to, and I just appreciate what you're doing and the way you're seeing people through your nonprofit. And it doesn't have to be, I love that it's not about resolving a crisis. It's literally about bringing joy into the world and just reminding human beings how important it is to find joy and the practice and the discipline even of joy. So I love what you're doing.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And thank you all for being with us. That wraps up this episode of the Matt Hilton Show. Stay tuned next week as we have another guest that is a fascinating person with an inspiring story. Take care.
If you'd like to contact Matt or know a fascinating person with an inspiring story that would make a great guest, reach out to the show at themattHiltonshow@gmail.com.